Hello everyone, hope you're doing well and are safe. And I'll be your faculty for this particular unit named Change, Modernization and Development. Now, before starting with this unit, I would like you guys to retrospect and re-revise the concept of development and modernization. I believe that you guys must have heard this term modernization and development quite frequently. Okay, so let's brush it up and let's freshen it up before we start with this unit. So modernization is basically the process of in lay person's word, it will be like updating certain thing, right? So like we are trying to make something work in a contemporary setting. But in sociological term, modernization is often referred to as a transformation of society, right? The process of transforming the society from a traditional one into a very advanced and modern one. So in this particular unit, we'll be studying about the change, the impact of modernization. We'll also be touching upon the concepts of development. So our learning objectives for this unit will be, just like I said, that we'll be establishing the definition and understanding around the concepts of change, modernization, and development. Then we'll be studying about the perspectives of change and in relation to the concept of modernization, and we'll be touching upon the concepts of development. Then we will go on towards the barriers of change, right? So we'll be understanding that what are the causes of change, what are the conditions that paves way for change, and what all are the consequences and what all are the barriers of these changing processes like modernization, and like how development unfolds in all these conditions and barriers. And lastly, we'll be touching upon the developmental experiences of India. So, without further ado, let's start with our first slide of this unit, that is the social change concept, characteristics, and causes. So, under this, we'll be establishing the definition of social change and we'll be studying about the concept and its characteristics. So, just like different other concepts, the social scientists have also led and underlined different definitions and different understanding of social change. But the most common and the most used sense of social change is a continuous process that occurs in community, right? So the community, the society is constantly changing, it is constantly moving, and there are number of factors that are affecting this change. So, social scientists have underlined social change in terms of change in relationships, in organization, in culture, in institution, in structure, and in functioning of the social system. So, in relationships, we can say that how there is a dynamic change in the kind of relationships that we have had, right? So in current times, the number of divorces have increased. So we can say that there is quite a change in relationships, right? There are number of cultural changes that we can witness around us, right? So like maybe there was a time where women were considered to be confined at their own homes, right? But now there is a slight acceptance around women being working and being the breadwinners of the family. There is this concept of single parent that has emerged. So like we can witness number of changes in the structure and in the functioning of our society. So, a social change, it is a continuous and an ongoing process that carries on and on, right? Now, there are a few identifiable, like few noticeable characters of social change, right? And we'll be discussing few of them. So first, social change, it happens in every society, okay? But the rate of change, it varies from place to place, right? So social change is sometimes it is planned, it is intentional. We know that we are introducing this particular policy that might end up changing the situation of a particular group in our society, right? And sometimes we can say that social change is completely unplanned, right? So it is something really very organic that changes with time. People understand that thing with time and they accept it, okay? So sometimes social change, it might generate certain amount of controversy, because like it touches upon a topic that might be a taboo in a particular society, okay? And sometimes this social change, it might matter more to a certain group, and sometimes it might not matter to some other group, right? So, for example, the feminist struggle or the narrative around highlighting women rights will definitely be way more important to women. Right? There are definitely some men and some other groups also that comes up in support of women, but primarily it will be impacting women, and hence it will be more important to them than to others. So, after having established the concept and characteristics of social change, let's discuss the causes of social change, right? So, we'll be discussing it in number of terms. So, first, let's discuss cultural change. Okay. Now, a large part of change in society, it is done through the medium of culture, right? So, if there is any discovery, if there is any invention, or if there is any change, either a smaller one or a massive change, they are all they all take place in society through source of culture only, okay? So hence the causes of social change would be through massively cultural change only. Then coming up of new ideas and a slight change or modification of old ideas, okay? So the ideas and change could be another very important factor that influences social change, right? Then coming to the third aspect of social change would be the demographic changes, right? So the changes that occur in the demographic structure of any society where there is demographic transition. So maybe like the improving of standard of living, improving of healthcare, improving of birth rates, reduction in death rates. So all this significantly impacts social change also, right? Then coming to the fourth aspect, that is of conflict and change, right? So social change, it sometimes is caused by tension and conflict. Now this conflict could be a positive conflict also, right? So like maybe people come together, they try to raise awareness about the issues that they are facing, and like people come together, they retaliate, right? So it might cause tension for a certain moment, and it might create a conflict for a brief moment, but ultimately maybe that social change is good. And sometimes this social change, it might not also be good. It might just create tension and conflict only, but even that would be considered as a change in society. Like somehow even that conflict, that negative tension will also bring about a social change in society, right? Then we'll be discussing lastly about the change and social movements, right? So just like I told you that how people they come together in form of groups, in form of trade unions, in form of student unions, or medical groups, or teachers, or any group that you could affiliate with. that you could resonate with, they come together and they try to highlight their own plight, they try to highlight their own struggle, and they try to bring about a deliberate, a very conscious, and like a decided change in the values, norms, institutions, and cultural relationships around them. So like these will all be primarily the causes of social change, and this social change, it might often like lead to multiple innovations in society. It brings about the changes in the institutions. Moving on to our next topic, let's discuss about the perspective of social change. So, under this, we'll be discussing two perspectives, the evolutionary one and the conflict perspective. Now, under evolutionary perspective, we'll be discussing about Comte and Spencer's viewpoint. So, Comte, he argues that human intellect, it passes through three historical phases, like the three stages, that is the theological stage, the metaphysical stage, and the positive stage. So the theological and metaphysical were the abstract stages where like everything, the functioning of the society, any scientific reasoning was absent in these two stages, and every product was considered to be a supernatural product. Whereas the positivist stage was the one where people started actually questioning, where actually people started rationalizing their thoughts. Coming to Spencer's view, he said that the human societies, they pass through a course of natural development. So what he is trying to say is that that society moves from the simple to complex forms of structures. Okay, and he says that this characterization is done by an increasing specialization of parts. So basically, we can say that evolutionary perspective of social change is based on the idea that societies move from simple to more complex structures, and like they believe that people earlier had their own cultural attitudes, they had their own behaviors which were advanced over time. Okay, and they become more specialized and they become more advanced in comparison to the societies, in comparison to the structures that existed before. Coming to the conflict perspective, now, as the name itself suggests, that the conflict perspective can be best understood in terms of tension and conflict between groups or between individuals. Okay, so they say that change is a very intrinsic process of society, and it is often, like the social change takes place through tension and conflict. So here we can highlight, maybe like we have discussed under Karl Marx capitalism also, that how he highlighted that capitalism as a, like as a structure, it would be overthrown by the working class that was known as proletariat, and the workers will come together and they will overthrow this whole economic structure, and then socialism will prevail. So like this could be an example that how like tension and conflict between groups might lead to social change in society. Now let's discuss few other perspectives, that is the structural functional perspective and social psychological perspective. Now the structural functional perspective, these are the theorists which believe that society, it comprises of number of units, like number of parts, and each unit has something very unique and specialized to contribute. So when these units and different parts, when they come together, they come together and they try to maintain the internal balance of the society. So basically, they're saying ki, that the function of the society, it is to work together and to maintain an equilibrium, and whatever change that will come natural to them will facilitate the way for the social change, right? Then coming to social psychological perspective, now these theorists they point out that the activities of the people they have the essence of change in society, right? So the social psychological perspective it can be like defined as the study of influences. So they say that the influences a society can have on the actions of an individual. So they say that the society can modify, they can make certain changes in the behavior on the individuals. Feelings and thoughts can be modulated, and these changes can facilitate change, and this whole narrative can play an essential role in the social development of an individual as well as the whole society. Now, hopefully, these perspectives of social change are clear to you guys. Let's move to our next topic, that is of modernization, and we'll be discussing its concept first, and then we'll be discussing its features. Now, modernization is, in simple terms, we can say that it is a continuous process. Okay, so this continuous process it transforms the old social, economic, and psychological elements, and it basically like transforms the society into adoption of new technologies. It can increase efficiency, productivity, it can increase the quality of life, right? So basically modernization sums up the changes that converts an agricultural or underdeveloped society into an industrialized society with a relatively efficient and active government. So, modernization could be studied in economic, in political, and in social cultural terms also, right? So, basically, the modernization it is a process that embraces change in all ways, like social, cultural, political, economic, in psychological terms also. It is a process that embraces change. Now, coming on to the features of modernization, it emphasizes a high degree of structural differentiation and specialization. So, which means that the things that were a bit unorganized, it comes into place. Okay, then modernization it emphasizes onto the growth of individualism also, right? So the society that is driven by self-interest, that focuses onto a certain standard of living, all this comes under the feature of modernization, right? Then the powers that the state has, whether these powers are absolute or whether there will be a democratic process that will be implemented, so all this also comes under the feature of modernization, because the political representation of each and every individual of society is an important feature of modernity, right? Then universal adult franchise, just like I said, that a political representation or political participation is very important, and hence universal adult franchise comes into place, which means that a person, when a child becomes an adult and they reach to a certain age, it is mandatory for them to vote, to actively participate in the political processes of their own country, of their own society, right? Then modernization it also significantly impacts the idea of social progress, right? So how there could be a transformation in society, how there is social emancipation. So like again here I would like to like highlight that how conditions of women, how the narrative around the gender, how the narrative around the division of labor has changed. So, modernity has a huge hand in transforming the society for better, right? So, modernity also works towards the social emancipation, right? And lastly, in the economic terms, also, modernity has significantly contributed. So, there is increased mobility, there is increased industrialization. So, there are technological advancements. Hence, people have now so many different ways in which they have progressed in society.